GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Inayat Flanagan on your TV and on your radio. And we're all the way through until midday with an absolute cracker for you today.
Yes, absolutely. Make sure that you get in touch with your views as usual. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be getting through all of those throughout the programme. But first, here's the latest news.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 10. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Storm Eunice is disrupting travel with strong winds hitting southwest England and a second red weather warning issued for the southeast. People are being advised to stay at home with gusts of up to 90 miles per hour forecast. Hundreds of schools have been closed and all train services in Wales have been suspended. An emergency COBRA meeting will be held later to discuss the government's response to this latest storm. The Met Office is urging people to take the threat seriously.
The main message has to be just take heed of these warnings. This is serious. We only issue red weather warnings when we think there is a threat to life. So please take these warnings seriously. Please stay inside, particularly across those red warning areas. But again, in the amber warning area, please only do it. Just think about whether you need to make that journey.
Ukraine's military says 60 ceasefire violations by pro-Russian separatists have been recorded in the past 24 hours. National police have released new video showing a residential building alight after shelling yesterday. Separatists claim Ukrainian government forces opened fire on their territory 4 times. The British Security Minister Damien Hines accused Russia of publishing disinformation as an excuse to go to war.
What we need to be is prepared. We need to know that this kind of disinformation is likely to come further. There's likely to be more of it, to know that we shouldn't take such things at face value, and to be absolutely clear who here is the aggressor, who has built up all this military capability at the border of another nation. And we have to stand shoulder to shoulder, as I say, with our friends in Ukraine.
Hundreds of people have been rescued after a ferry caught fire between Greece and Italy in the early hours of the morning. The Greek Coast Guard has confirmed most of the 290 people on board the Italian-flagged ship were taken to the island of Corfu. There are no immediate reports of deaths or serious injuries. The cause of the fire is not yet known. Prince Harry's claim against a Home Office decision preventing him from paying for police protection will be heard in the High Court later. The Duke of Sussex argues that his private security team in the US doesn't have adequate jurisdiction abroad, nor does it have, he says, access to UK intelligence, which is needed to keep his family safe. Harry and Meghan lost their taxpayer-funded security when they quit as senior working royals earlier last year. Wales has scrapped the use of COVID passes. A person's vaccination status was required for entry to indoor and outdoor venues, including sports grounds and nightclubs. Although the rules have been changed, venues have been told they can still demand proof of jabs if they want to. NHS leaders in England are warning free COVID tests and self-isolation must remain in place for the public. A survey of senior staff found 79% disagree with plans to scrap free PCR and lateral flow tests. More than 3/4 also want to keep the legal requirement to self-isolate following a positive result. The Prime Minister is expected to announce a Living with COVID plan on Monday. Former Medical Director Andrew Vallance-Owen says testing is vital.
Evidence is still there. There are a lot of hospital admissions still. For people who find that they are positive, they should stay in quarantine for a few days, especially if they're going to be going into places where there are lots of people, particularly where there are lots of vulnerable people. I think it's premature to cut it all off now. One step at a time is what I would advise, and stick to the science.
And the International Olympic Committee has launched a scathing attack on the team behind the 15-year-old figure skater at the centre of a drugs probe. IOC President Thomas Bach says he's disturbed by the chilling attitude of Kamila Valieva's coaches. The Russian teenager fell twice in the women's free skate final. An error-strewn performance saw her slump from first place to fourth at the Beijing Winter Olympics. There was no hug for Valieva as she left the ice in tears. Instead, she was asked by her coach why she'd stopped fighting. This is GB News. We'll have updates throughout the day, including the latest on Storm Eunice. Now it's back to Patrick and Inaya and to the point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin-Iman and Patrick Christys on your TV and on your radio. We've got a show full of all of today's big stories and lots of discussions that you care about, so here's what's on the menu.
Well, thousands without power, trains cancelled, tell me about it, I'm going to get stuck into that one later. Millions told to stay home, Storm Eunice is here, bringing 100-mile-an-hour winds and indeed blizzards as well. Our reporters from across the UK will be outside getting hypothermia for your benefit later.
Yes, indeed. Well, Ukrainian forces and Russian-backed rebels have accused each other of ceasefire violations in Ukraine, fueling further tensions and more predictions of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. We'll bring you more of that very soon.
Yes, now also coming up this hour, we'll speak to the campaigning MP Andrew Bridgen about these post office scandals. One of the most widespread miscarriages of justice in British history, apparently, so we'll be bringing you all the latest on that.
Yes, absolutely. We have all that coming up and much more across the programme, and you can get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, right. Apologies, everybody. Obviously, I normally open up with monologue with my piece to camera.
Yes.
And I had a little bit of a shocker this morning. All of the trains from where I were cancelled. I then drove in and I've since had to try to move the car several times.
Well, I'm happy you're safe.
Thank you very much. She's actually bitterly disappointed in my efforts this morning. But, yes, we move on. Anyway, the Ukrainian government forces and Russian-backed rebels, have accused each other of ceasefire violations, further escalating these fears of a Russian invasion.
Yes, both sides accused the other of shelling after military and mortar attacks on Thursday. The Kremlin has said it is watching the situation closely. Britain and the US have accused Russia of manufacturing a false pretext to invade Ukraine.
Well, our Homeland Security editor, Mark White, has this report for us.
It is an awesome display of the firepower the Russian military has at its disposal, should Vladimir Putin decide to use it. For the moment, the Kremlin continues to insist these are simply part of Russia's regularly scheduled military exercises in the region. But for Ukraine and the West, these are manoeuvres with menace. The British Prime Minister visited RAF Waddington in Lincolnshire, shown around a Typhoon, as an additional 4 of these fighters arrived in Cyprus to help boost the air policing effort over Eastern Europe. He again urged Vladimir Putin to pull back from the brink.
There is still time for the Putin regime to step back. There's still time to avoid a catastrophe for Russia, a catastrophe for Ukraine and for the world.
Tensions on the Russia-Ukraine border have increased significantly in the last couple of days. This nursery in the Luhansk region of eastern Ukraine was shelled by nearby Russian-backed separatists. At the NATO summit in Brussels, the US Defence Secretary said it was an extremely worrying development.
We've said for some time that the Russians might do something like this in order to justify a military conflict, so we'll be watching this very closely.
These latest satellite images show the extent of the Russian military build-up, thousands of troops and machinery at key locations along the Ukrainian border, with little evidence of any drawdown as promised by Moscow.
Russia must think again. Despite their claims, Russia's military build-up shows no signs of slowing. There is currently no evidence that their forces are withdrawing, and we need Russia to step back from the brink.
On the Ukrainian side of the border, President Zelensky has been visiting his forces. They are vastly outnumbered by their Russian neighbours. But Ukraine warns any move by Vladimir Putin will be no walkover. It would be the worst possible outcome for both sides. Mark White, GB News.
Yes, gosh, what do you make of all of this? Do you think we are on the brink of something massive here?
Yeah, I mean, I do worry about us talking it up. We have heard only this week that there was going to be an invasion imminently. We were told that this was going to happen in the last couple of days, and that hasn't really materialised. And I do think that Russia is a very paranoid and anxious society, and it seems to me that it would be unwise for them to make such a disastrous move. I mean, I don't think that they are internally really capable, strength-wise, in order to have a war within Europe, and I think it would just push them closer to China, which would obviously be not very good for society across the world. And so, whilst I think the Russian regime is obviously a very questionable regime, to say the least, I'm also sometimes sceptical of some of the statements made by European and Western leaders. I think that sometimes there's a bit of moral grandstanding.
Yes, indeed, and it's interesting to know what you guys think at home, actually, about this. GBViews, GBnews.uk. From what I've seen so far in the inbox and over the last few days, really, actually, it's a mixed bag. There are quite a few of you who seem to say, to be honest with you, I don't really care about Ukraine. We've got a lot going on over here. You know, just today, for example, the stories like, where are all our GPs?
I mean, the cost of living crisis is scary, what's going on in this country.
It's massive. But then the flip side of it is, well, if there is a conflict, then I suppose the cost of living might go up again. What happens with the gas, etc.?
No, but this is the thing. We should have been thinking 10 years, 20 years previously about energy. In France right now, their energy is 30% cheaper than ours because they have 70% of their energy coming from nuclear.
Yeah.
We have about 15%, and that has been a political decision, which has now meant we are energy insecure when it comes to these geopolitical problems.
I can't help but feel like a lot of people pushing this big, grand environmentalist agenda actually don't care about money. That's the thing. They don't really care about having the money. They don't really care about whether or not anyone else does. So for them, they can just write off the cost, because probably all, living in a commune and using moss for beds or something. But anyway, right. Moving on.
Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner has been criticised for saying police should shoot terrorists first and ask questions second. Rayner admitted she was quite hardline on crime, also stating that I want you to beat down the door of the criminals and sort them out and antagonise them. Well, joining us now for more on this is Sam Armstrong, Communications Director at the Henry Jackson Society Security think tank. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Sam. I mean, what do you make of Angela Rayner's comments? I mean, is this Labour Party trying to show that they're tough on crime, or is this actually just empty words?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Labour Party have realised that the British public aren't going to take a kind of hug a criminal type approach to justice and continue to vote for it. I'm in the rare position of quite enjoying what Angela Rayner said. I think she's absolutely right. Of course, we shouldn't not ask questions. The police should ask as many questions as they've got time to do. But they've come an awful long way since Jeremy Corbyn, who, let's not forget, was a leader that Angela Rayner very happily served, was saying that if I'm Prime Minister, I would have police officers never shoot terrorists.
Well, that's true, actually, isn't it? And I can't help but feel like now, like Labour are on a little bit of a law and order march, aren't they? We've seen what Sadiq Khan is trying to do, has done really, with Cressida Dick. What I thought was fascinating about that, actually, was the fact that the thing that almost really brought her down was kind of misogynistic text. It wasn't really the fact that she's not been able to get to grips with this rampant knife crime epidemic that we've had, or a whole host of other massive crime-related issues that we've had. It was misogynistic text, but obviously they're still awful, don't get me wrong. But what do you think about the idea then that actually it's deemed controversial to shoot a terrorist first and ask them questions later? I mean, isn't that kind of what most people would want?
Yeah, there's been this furious reaction from a few lawyers on Twitter in particular who've said, oh, this is ridiculous. But look, there is not space for due process when you're confronted by a terrorist. Well, the police officers who had just seen Khalid Masood mow down pedestrians across Westminster Bridge, run through the gates of the Houses of Parliament, stab a police officer, charging towards Parliament, were they meant to say, what are you doing here, Mr. Masood? Please don't stab anyone, before they shot him? No, of course not. Sometimes the police need to act. But I think you're right to bring up, of course, where the Labour Party are getting involved on these police officers in Charing Cross. I mean, look, people of minority backgrounds in this country face crime every day. And you would think that a Labour Party that was taking their values, their interests seriously, would be wanting to do more to tackle them getting stabbed and killed, rather than the fact that a few police officers are talking unto themselves in a way that absolutely they shouldn't be doing. But, is that the scandal, or is, as you say, the scandal that knife crime, burglary is rampant through London and shows no sign of abating?
But on that point about, whether or not this is actually the appropriate response, I mean, aren't we meant to be moving towards a more civilised society, that we're not engaging kind of extrajudicial killings, and regardless of how heinous someone's crime is, we make sure that the first thing that we think about is to ensure that there is due process and that they are held accountable in a court of law? And actually, Angela Rayner's comments, some might argue, are almost kind of trivialising the seriousness of actually taking a life, regardless of the context.
Well, look, if a terrorist had surrendered and was sitting there on the floor, I wouldn't support a police officer shooting him. Of course I wouldn't. And indeed, they don't. That's why a number of terrorists in recent years have been arrested and imprisoned for very extended periods of time. But I'm afraid, as much as we might all wish to live in a world in which everybody can be brought to justice and go through the processes, there are some people who have checked out from that. There are some people who will kill, maim and injure until such a time that they are stopped. And the sad reality is, whether they're in Iraq or Syria or over here, there are times when our government, which has a fundamental obligation to keep us safe, has no choice but to take the minimum possible force, but in that case, lethal force, to stop them.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some people in our views already commenting on the fact that there is the infamous picture of Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer taking the knee. And actually, many people do associate organisations like Black Lives Matter with a lot of rioting that happened in America, burning down of cities and cars, and not necessarily, and defunding the police actually, are not necessarily associated with, hard line on crime. So it might be a bit contradictory.
I want you to go around to their house, right, and bring them swift justice, but do it for free.
What do you make of that it's a bit contradictory in terms of Angela Rayner's messaging?
Yeah, I think it is contradictory. It's certainly very different to what she was saying under the last leader. It's different to what she's been saying under this leader. I think the Labour Party have realised, probably they've taken the time to poll or ask the public what do they think on crime, that the public want it dealing with. And if I was to be a voter, maybe in the red wall, that was a little bit suspicious of, have they really changed? What I might ask for is, well, Ms. Rayner, what are you going to do differently to what's being done? How are you going to toughen on crime? It's all well and good you saying you support this, or you would tolerate this, or whatever, but are you going to give the police more powers? Are you going to start supporting them? Are you going to start backing them in ways that functional, physical ways that they haven't been doing or haven't been being supported? Or are you still going to be on them? Because I think, let's be clear, Angela Rayner might, to many police officers, seem like the type of politician who's more likely to call for an inquiry into them using force of any type than she is to be the one that backs them.
Yes, I can't help but agree with that. Sam Armstrong, thank you very much, Communications Director at the Henry Jackson Security Think Tank. So, yes, I might as well throw this one open to people. We've already had quite a few emails coming in about this, and we've had Paul, for example. He'd shoot first, ask questions later when it comes to terrorism, hopefully not just in general, Paul. He says, I'm an ex-British soldier, and a soldier's way is to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand that sentiment, but there does seem something very unsatisfying, I mean, to me, when it comes to just killing a terrorist on site. I mean, we've seen some of these horrendous terrorist attacks. I mean, Charlie Hebdo is one that has really stuck with me for really quite palpably for years. And you just think these people should be held to account and to face the horrendous...
You mean like render the... Yeah, it's difficult because as well, a lot of the time they have these fake suicide vests on, don't they? And so you can like...
no, that's true.
There's no easy answers. By definition, there's no easy answers, are there? I think I agree with you. In an ideal world, I think, if you could bring them to justice and make them serve the rest of their lives in quite miserable conditions, that's probably what a lot of people would want, given that they often want to die anyway, don't they? Which is why they're doing it. Why give them what they want? But, I think I've got to be on the shoot first side, which is not something I would always think I'd say at 10:20 in the morning on a Friday. But it's one of those days.
Lots of you still coming in. Eunice said that from Oldham, if Labour are serious about law and order, they would have been tackling grooming gangs. I think that is a very important issue.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it, as well? It's all very well and good saying that they want to bring swift justice and this, that and the other, but I can remember a certain Labour Party MP, Sarah Champion, who spoke out very vocally about grooming gangs.
And was demonised.
And was
incendiary for doing so.
Yes, indeed. So, which one is it, Labour? Anyway, right, OK. Well, look, after the break, we will ask Network Rail about how they're dealing with travel disruptions because of Storm Eunice. But first, I think quite on brand here, is the weather.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. Storm Eunice has arrived overnight and is likely to bring widespread disruption during the next few hours, as well as, in some places, dangerous wind speeds. That's why the Met Office have issued an amber and a red warning for certain parts of the country. Its southern areas worst affected by the strong wind speeds through the rest of Friday. Storm Eunice has moved in overnight, a rapidly deepening area of low pressure with the strongest winds on its southern flank, and so in the amber warning area for the southern half of the UK, risk of 70 to 80 mile-per-hour wind gusts during the next few hours, but in the red warning area, risk of 90 mile-per-hour wind gusts. Widespread disruption in the south from those winds and risk to life in some of the more exposed spots towards the southwest because of the 90 mile-per-hour wind gusts. The strongest of the winds move east through the morning, and rain in the north, falling as snow, especially over the higher parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, could also lead to disruption. Risk of 20 centimetres of snow building up over the higher spots of northern England and Scotland. Risk of blizzards and risk of drifting of that snow. Sunnier skies return to the southern half of the UK by the afternoon. It's going to be cold in the north, 3 to 5 Celsius, milder further south, but with that very strong wind continuing through the day. The weekend, nevertheless, starts off a bit quieter. A sunny start for many at first. The strongest of the winds will have gone away. But another system moves in through Saturday, bringing some wet and windy weather to parts of England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland stay sunnier but colder, with highs here of 4 to 6 Celsius, 9 to 10 in the south. But watch out for gales around the coast of the English Channel. So more wet and windy weather through Saturday in some places. And then the focus moves north for Sunday, with the strongest winds expected across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 10:25. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Iman, and Patrick Christys. We're live on your TV and on your radio this morning.
Well, before we get to our next guest, I've got something very exciting to share with you all. Absolutely, yes, yes, yes. Just take a look at this.
Hello, mate. Step into the studio, please.
How are you keeping? Busy?
I've got a brand new show coming on GB News called The Friday Night Feast.
Oh, yeah?
I'm going to take a new news angle on the week's biggest stories. Move it forward. I want to talk about what I think we should be talking about, not what we're being told that we have to. Right, well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. A brand new show right here on GB News, The Friday Night Feast, 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. with me, Patrick Christys. What could possibly go wrong, eh? Oh, I've left my wallet in a cab. Yes.
Hey! I'm so happy.
Thank you. Well,
I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. The first episode is this evening. I'm super excited for it. We've got a tremendous team beavering away on it outside as we speak. And it is going to be very, very different, OK? It is a mixture of light entertainment and news as well, but we're trying to take different angles on stories, really. And also, I kind of ritualistically humiliate myself a lot throughout it. I know, what's new there, eh? But... yes, it's a feature called Challenge Christys, where you, the viewers, the listeners, you get to challenge me to do something mad, really, and I have to go and do it. So, put it this way...
I'm a bit scared.
The people of Southend got a shock yesterday.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear. But you have to tune in to see what all that's about.
Well, make sure that you tune in. Remind us of what it's called and what time.
Friday Night Feast, and it's 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. Don't miss it. It is going to be mad.
Absolutely. Well, in other news...
Moving on.
Millions across the UK have been told to stay home as Storm Eunice makes landfall after the Met issued a red warning, meaning significant danger to life.
Well, let's cross over to our Scotland reporter now, Davy Donaldson, who's in West Lothian, and Alice Porter's there as well. She's going to be talking to us from Reading Station. But we'll go over to you first, I think, Davy. What's it like up there?
Well, I have to say it's completely calmed down. It's not bad at all. I'm on Blackness Beach in West Lothian, and as you can see, it's not really bad. Slight little bit of rain. Certainly, there's not been any snow in the last couple of hours or so, and if it has, it's certainly not settled. So, yeah, a very serene picture here compared to what people down in England and the south of Wales and certainly in the west of England, southwest of England are facing at the moment. But yeah, I mean the wind's died down. Further north in Scotland, up in Grampian, there's been quite a bit of snow up there, but you'd expect that kind of around this time of year. Some schools closed in that area, and slightly further south, just north of Dundee in the Angus area, some schools closed there as well. Over in Glasgow and in Edinburgh, we've had a dusting of snow, but no more than that. What I think was promised hasn't really arrived yet. I mean, there's still time for it to happen, but certainly the picture here in Scotland is very much a very different one to what we're seeing down in England and over in Wales as well.
Yeah, I love that, by the way. I love that. I was expecting it to be like swirling winds and rain, and it just cuts to Davy, and it's just peace and tranquility. So there we go. But Alice, we'll go over to you now. It looks like it's sunny where you are.
It is sunny, but there's no peace and tranquility here. The red weather warning came into effect about half an hour ago, and the wind has really picked up, and it's causing severe disruption at such a major station. This is the second biggest interchange outside of London, and normally you have 140 trains coming from Reading into Paddington as people commute, but that has absolutely not been happening. As you can hear above me, we keep hearing the announcements that so many trains are being cancelled. Of course, in Wales, all trains are being cancelled, and there are severely reduced services across the rest of the country. I was speaking to some passengers earlier who were waiting for their trains. This is what they said to me about their journeys.
So we were meant to be going to London Paddington for about, originally it was going to be about 9:30, but we've obviously had to leave a lot earlier, so it's 8:15 and we're trying to get on a train and still waiting for one.
So it was already planned, but obviously seeing the news over the last few days, I've decided that I'll come a wee bit early. I've come about an hour early just in case, and hopefully get an earlier train to make sure I don't get stranded.
Yeah, so I've just found out that my train is cancelled because down at the bottom the signs all say it's up. So I was going to go to London, and yeah, I think so far all of the trains in the next hour are cancelled. So.
Well, there we go. Thank you very much, both of you, bringing those. And I'm glad, actually, that it's not too bad. I know it's going to get a bit worse, Alice, where you are, don't get me wrong, but otherwise I'd fear for you, Davey. We don't want anyone getting hypothermia on the job, you know? So thank you very much, both of you, for bringing us those weather reports. We'll have to keep tabs on it throughout the day, won't we?
Yeah, I'm seeing it get a bit windy where Alice is. Everyone, please do stay safe and be cautious as much as we can.
As much as we can. It's important that we are very much down south being urged to stay at home, really. We're having a weather lockdown now.
Yeah, oh dear.
Well, there we go. Right, OK. Well, let's hear now from Network Rail about the disruptions to travel. Jake Kelly is Network Rail's director. He joins us now. Good morning. Thank you very, very much. I think it's important just to start with what the advice is at the moment, really. So what is the latest advice for commuters?
So our very, very strong advice is not to travel unless you absolutely have to. Reflecting the Met Office advice to stay inside, customers really shouldn't travel unless it's absolutely necessary.
And do people that perhaps booked travel weeks ago or anything like that get any compensation or get their money back? Do you know?
Yes, absolutely. Look, we're trying to do our absolute best by passengers today. Passengers can choose to travel over the weekend if that's what they'd like to do, or indeed get a refund if they choose not to travel at all.
What have you seen, actually? You know, have you had plenty of issues on the tracks and things? Have there been the old trees across the lines and this kind of stuff?
Yes, we're starting to see some trees across the line as we expected. The train service is still running, but of course, in some respects, this is only just beginning, and we expect it to get much worse before it gets better, sadly.
Well, we hear a lot about climate change and possible increased and extreme weather events increasing. I mean, is the Network Rail making provisions for a possible increase in disruptions in the long term?
We have thousands of colleagues out today with chainsaws and other specialist kit to keep the railway open as absolutely best we can, and that will continue today, tomorrow, and in the future.
Yeah, indeed. And so there are, I heard the phrase just out of the corner of my ear. Is that even a phrase? Out of the corner of my hearing, I heard the words chainsaw gangs earlier, right? And I completely misinterpreted what the story was and thought, OK, here we go, right, we've got some breaking stuff. Well, just tell us what's actually happening.
So we have thousands of colleagues who are out and about picking stuff off the railway, clearing trees away, some of which, as you can imagine, are enormously heavy, require very specialist skills to get rid of, making sure that we minimise disruption to the absolute minimum extent, and when things do go wrong, we can clean them away really quickly.
Good stuff. Well, look, thank you very, very much. And you're going to be incredibly busy, I imagine, over the coming days. So good luck with everything. Jake Kelly there, of course, Network Rail's director. So just whizzing you through what the latest advice is and indeed what's going on, basically.
Yes, indeed. Well, after the break, we'll speak to MP Andrew Bridgen about the post office scandal, seen as one of the widest miscarriages of justice in British history. But before that, a look at the morning's news.
It's 10:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A second red weather warning has been issued for the southeast of England as Storm Eunice hits the southwest, causing travel disruptions. People are being advised to stay at home as wind gusts reach up to 90 miles per hour. Hundreds of schools have been closed and all train services in Wales have been suspended. Ukraine's military says 60 ceasefire violations by pro-Russian separatists have been recorded in the past 24 hours. Police have released new video showing what they say is a fire at a residential building after shelling on Thursday. Boris Johnson's due to attend a major security conference in Munich this weekend to try to de-escalate tensions between Russia and the West. Hundreds of people have been rescued after a ferry caught fire between Greece and Italy in the early hours of this morning. The Greek Coast Guard confirmed most of the 290 passengers were taken to the island of Corfu. There are no immediate reports of deaths or severe injuries. The cause of the fire is not yet known. Wales has scrapped the use of COVID passes. A person's vaccination status was required for entry to indoor and outdoor venues, including sports grounds and nightclubs. Although the rules have been changed, venues have been told they can still demand proof of jabs if they want to. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. We'll have a full update for you and the latest on Storm Eunice at the top of the hour. It's back to Patrick and Anaya with To The Point in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's 10:37, and this is To The Point, of course, with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Falarin Iman on GB News, live on your TV and your radio and online.
Yes, well, a public inquiry into the post office scandal, regarded as one of the widest miscarriages of justice in British history, began this week. A total of 736 sub-postmasters were wrongly accused of theft, fraud and false accounting.
Many had their lives ruined. Some were even jailed, or actually as well, took their own lives. Now, one MP who has consistently called for an inquiry into this, calling the scandal a national disgrace, is Andrew Bridgen. And Andrew joins us now, Conservative MP for North West Leicestershire. Andrew, this is, well, it is a national disgrace, isn't it?
Yes, and this is, we're getting towards the end of a 12-year campaign to sort this problem out. It was a piece of casework that arrived on my desk within a couple of weeks of being first elected in 2010. From constituents. It was almost unbelievable at the time, and it's all turned out to be true. I've been calling for a public inquiry and proper compensation for at least the last 7 years. And what's clear to me is that we knew in Parliament and the Post Office knew that these convictions were wrong 7 years ago, and it's a disgrace that it's taken this long to get to the point of a public inquiry.
And Andrew, why do you think it has taken so long?
Well, I'm going to give evidence to the inquiry itself, what I know about the investigation. I think there's been a lot of cover-up by the Post Office of what's been going on. It's a huge problem. And it's not only the 736 sub-postmasters who were wrongfully convicted of fraud and false accounting. We also need to have compensation for the thousands of sub-postmasters who would have been coerced by the Post Office into repaying sums of money which they didn't actually owe, that were due to the glitches in the Horizon computer system. And it's very damning that for many, many years, well over a decade, the Post Office were convicting people of fraud, making two claims. Firstly, that the Horizon system was bomb-proof and had no glitches, and secondly, that no one could alter the accounts in sub-postmasters' computers without them knowing. They use that as evidence in court, and both of those claims are proven to be false, which means that all those convictions are unsafe, and also that the system was very glitchy, and lots of sub-postmasters will have paid over huge sums of money which they actually didn't owe.
And some people did take their own lives, is that correct?
Yeah, and it's broken people's lives. They've suffered the humiliation of being convicted of a crime. These are people who were the sub-postmasters in a village. Otherwise, for decades, they've been seen as pillars of society. It's been absolutely devastating. I'm not sure how you ever quantify the damages that they're owed for destroying their lives and their reputations. And I would like to see an independent compensation panel set up. And it's important that as we're carrying out this public inquiry, we get to the root cause of how this happened, who was covering up, who knew what and when, and that people in positions of responsibility who should have done better are held to account.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you make of this kind of broader idea about the way in which technology is kind of changing employment, that decisions are made by algorithms, they're made by different software, and employees just have to deal with that? Is that something that the government should be looking into, to making sure that there's greater workers' protections for the way in which technology and software and things like that are changing the relationship between employers and employees?
Well, there's no such thing as a foolproof system. Ultimately, it's the software is written by humans, and humans can make mistakes. Unfortunately, when it will come out at the inquiry that this whole Horizon system was actually was brought in by the Labour government, I think in 2003. They spent £800 million on it. It was originally going to be a computer system to deliver benefits for the Department of Work and Pensions. It had so many problems in it that they almost wrote the project off. But having spent £800 million, the then Labour government decided to modify it slightly and give it to the Post Office as an all-encompassing system. And it was deeply flawed when it was put in. And how no one at the Post Office looked at the figures. Before Horizon was introduced to the Post Office as its overall accounting system, there were about 5 or 6 convictions for fraud against sub-postmasters. Once the Horizon system came in, there was a 20-fold increase in prosecutions. If no one actually put 2 and 2 together and thought, what's changed, it's almost beyond belief.
Yeah, no, indeed. I mean, this system was so bad, it must have been designed by Dido Harding, you would imagine. But yeah, I'm just really keen to see what your thoughts are about the reaction that you've had from some of these postmasters, because you've obviously been campaigning for them and going into battle for them and things like that. So you must have, I'm presuming anyway, you've spoken to some of them since since the latest news announcement. So how are they?
Well, it's been a long, hard fight for them, and it's been more than a decade. I've been campaigning for 12 years, along with, I think, Kevin Jones is the only other MP that's left from the original Post Office review group we set up in 2011 to look into this matter. They're very relieved to have their name cleared, But what they need now is proper compensation. And I think the only way we're going to get that is with an independent compensation panel. And the sad thing is that in Parliament, I knew, and others knew, and the Post Office knew, in 2015 that those convictions were unsafe. But the Post Office decided to launch into prolonged litigation with the sub-postmasters, which they eventually lost after 5 or 6 years. And there were hundreds of millions of pounds wasted on legal costs, all borne by the taxpayer. What I want to avoid now is a repeat of that with all the sub-postmasters who will have lost out, who weren't criminally convicted. And if we don't deal with it now, Patrick, I'm absolutely convinced that a team of lawyers will contact those sub-postmasters and we'll go into another round of litigation for years. Compensation will be delayed, but it will be increased by legal costs. Again, that bill will fall to the taxpayer. This has been running on long enough. It is a national disgrace. It's the biggest miscarriage of justice by number in the history of this country, and we need to bring it to an end once and for all with a proper compensation package.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, Andrew Bridgen, giving his thoughts about the Post Office scandal that has been unfolding.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking, isn't it? And it is, you know, you do get these companies, they drag it out, they drag it out, they drag it out, and, you know, you think, you know, there are human lives at stake here, and unfortunately, in the case of the individual who committed suicide, of course, that in a very literal sense, there was a life at stake there. There will have been lives ruined, there will have been children's lives ruined, marriages possibly breaking up as well, you know, the added stress and pressure.
The unbelievable stress. I mean, I think it is something huge that we really need to look at, this kind of sense of corporate responsibility when you have these huge organisations that can kind of just treat people as if they're just numbers in a machine rather than the real human lives, as you rightfully mentioned, that are affected by this. And there needs to be some real leadership and accountability taken to make sure that if there is anything that can really be done to meet the disaster that these people have had to face, then it should be done as soon as possible.
You would imagine as well there would have had to have been, you know, meetings or something where it would have become obvious, wouldn't it, that these people had been wronged and that these people had been badly affected by it, and the decisions were still made, it would appear anyway, to still prolong this incident. And you know, where's the humanity there anyway? But moving on.
Yes, well, Southend-on-Sea is to become a city on March 1st as part of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. The new MP for Southend West, Anna Firth, who took over from the late Sir David Amos, announced the date to GBNews.
Well, our very own Ellie Costello has been in Southend-on-Sea to speak to people there about the legacy of Sir David Amos and, of course, this new city status.
Sunny Southend, home to sandy beaches, the longest pier in the world, and of course, it's fish and chips.
Delicious.
From the 1st of March, this will be the UK's newest city. It's an exciting time for this seaside town.
Today marks the end of a jam-packed City Week to celebrate Southend's newly secured city status. There have been light shows this week, there have been concerts, there have been special signs erected all around the town. And this is in honour of the late Sir David Amos, who was stabbed to death in October. He was the MP here for 24 years, and this is a moment he has long campaigned for.
There's been a big conversation here in Southend about what city status means for this town. I've been speaking to local people about what it means for them.
I mean, I think it's a really good idea. Hopefully we'll get more investment in the town from businesses. Hopefully more tourists will come. We can kind of compete against the other sort of big seaside towns like Brighton, Bournemouth. Overall, yeah, I think it's a good thing and a good tribute to Sir David Amos.
The thing is, as you say, in infrastructure, we've only got the 2 roads really into
one road in
Southend.
and 1 road out. That's the biggest problem.
But yeah, I mean,
I think that'll all be addressed in time.
Yes, I think it will.
I think it's great for the community and it's bringing people together. It's a sad situation that has had to happen in, but seeing the concert and how happy it made everyone, I think it's wonderful.
On the 3rd of February 2022, a by-election was held in Southend West, where Anna Firth became the new Conservative MP for the area, following in the footsteps of the late Sir David Amos. She has vowed to honour his legacy.
Sir David Amos was an amazing constituency MP. You know, he must have been one of the UK's finest constituency MPs, and yet Yes, so I'm really aware that I have enormous boots to fill, but having been such a brilliant MP, there's a fantastic legacy here to build on. So I think city status really is going to fall into three categories. Number one is civic pride. You know, becoming a city has given everybody across Southend a real lift. There's a real sense of enthusiasm. The second thing is cross-party working, because becoming a city isn't about party politics. It's about everybody coming together for the good of Southend, and that's, I think, is going to be a really powerful force. And I'm already chairing a cross-party group which is all about city implementation. And then the third thing, and the most important thing, is using our city status as a catalyst to attract more investment into the town. And one of the things I'm particularly passionate about is applying for UK City of Culture status.
A new MP brings hope that this city can heal from the wounds of last year. And city status opens an exciting new chapter for Southend. Ellie Costello, GB News.
Wow, that's very exciting for them to potentially get city status.
I think it's massive. I think it's absolutely huge. Of course, it's under very tragic circumstances, don't get me wrong, but no, brilliant stuff, I think, really, and thoroughly deserved. Well, here to give us the details of what else is in store for the occasion is a journalist with more knowledge than most of the inner workings of Buckingham Palace. It's former royal correspondent Michael Cole. Thank you very much, Michael. So, what else can we expect then from this Platinum Jubilee?
Well, you know, we the British love a good party, and not just in good old Southend. It's going to be throughout the country. The Queen has said specifically that she wants her Platinum Jubilee to bring people, communities together. And there's every opportunity for that in June. The centrepiece is a 4-day weekend from the 2nd to the 5th of June. The centrepiece of that will be a service of thanksgiving for the reign of Her Majesty at St Paul's Cathedral. But she's urging people to have a Platinum Jubilee lunch, so it'll be street parties wherever you like. But the big thing, when dusk falls, will be the lighting of 1,500 beacons from the Channel Islands to the very tip of Shetland, and also in the capitals of all the Commonwealth countries, including Her Majesty's 15 overseas realms. So there's plenty doing, and for anybody who's lucky enough to get a ticket, there's going to be one of those great concerts at Buckingham Palace. They haven't announced exactly who's going to be in it, but you can bet your life that anybody who is a star would feel that their twinkle power was increased if they were able to perform before the Queen at Buckingham Palace during that weekend. And then it doesn't stop there. We go on, we have the birthday parade, commonly known as the Trooping of the Colour. Now, I was only 10 years old when I went with my sister and my mother to see the Trooping of the Colour a week after the coronation in 1953. My mother bought us a cardboard and mirror periscope for 2 shillings. That's 10 pence. We didn't see a thing, but we were glad to be there. And I think many people will be out on the streets in the Mall, showing their appreciation of a unique, a word which is often overused and misused, a unique reign.
Indeed. Look, can I ask? I mean, I big royalist, anyone will know, of course, and I'm bang in favour of as many celebrations as possible as far as it comes to Her Majesty. Who's paying for all of this?
Well, I think some of it's coming from the government where necessary, but there's a tremendous number of local initiatives, and people are glad to do it. I think they're very happy to dig in their own pockets. One of the things which I think particularly appeals to the Queen is the Queen's green canopy. She's urging people to plant 60,000 trees throughout the land. And if you get out your spade and you go down to the garden centre and buy yourself a decent tree, that will be recorded and put on a map, and that will be presented to her. It's a really lovely idea, a green canopy throughout the country, and certainly there'll be a few trees lost today. Let's put a few back.
Well, indeed. And actually as well now, presumably, I don't know. You would know more than I. But is the Queen in a slightly better place now that Andrew has settled, I suppose, and she can maybe just focus more on the actual celebrations?
Well, that's certainly the great hope, and I'm sure that was behind I won't say haste, but the promptitude in actually settling that terrible, terrible case. And obviously, the decks should be cleared so that we can concentrate on what's important and what's just a terrible tragedy for everybody involved, a very unpleasant episode. But it is something which I think in time can be put behind. Even today, there's a poll out which shows how popular Her Majesty the Queen is. You know, it's not a given. I mean, nobody's reigned for 70 years before. Nobody. Queen Victoria had 2 jubilees, the Golden Jubilee and the Diamond Jubilee, shortly before she died. And she'd been very unpopular in her reign at times, and there'd been 7 determined attempts to assassinate her. And on the Golden Jubilee, she wrote in her diary that a man had been running beside her carriage as it came up the Mall, shouting, "Long live the Queen, long live the Queen." It was the first time it ever occurred to her that she was popular. Her Majesty the Queen will be in no doubt how popular she is, the most popular member of the royal family by far. And when we sing God Save the Queen, I really think we should mean it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning, former royal correspondent Michael Cole, telling us more about this Jubilee, which many people are excited about. I think it's positive. We've heard so much about divisions within the UK. It's good to hear something that might bring people together.
Well, keep all your views coming. GBViews at gbnews.uk. We'll be back very shortly after this break.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. Storm Eunice has arrived overnight and is likely to bring widespread disruption during the next few hours, as well as, in some places, dangerous wind speeds. That's why the Met Office have issued an amber and a red warning for certain parts of the country. It's southern areas worst affected by the strong wind speeds through the rest of Friday. Storm Eunice has moved in overnight, a rapidly deepening area of low pressure with the strongest winds on its southern flank, and so in the amber warning area for the southern half of the UK, risk of 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts during the next few hours, but in the red warning area, risk of 90 mile per hour wind gusts. Widespread disruption in the south from those winds, and a risk to life in some of the more exposed spots towards the southwest because of the 90 mile per hour wind gusts. The strongest of the winds move east through the morning, and rain in the north, falling as snow, especially over the higher parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, could also lead to disruption. Risk of 20 centimetres of snow building up over the higher spots of northern England and Scotland. Risk of blizzards and risk of drifting of that snow. Sunnier skies return to the southern half of the UK by the afternoon. It's going to be cold in the north, 3 to 5 Celsius, milder further south, but with that very strong wind continuing through the day. The weekend, nevertheless, starts off a bit quieter. A sunny start for many at first. The strongest of the winds will have gone away. But another system moves in through Saturday, bringing some wet and windy weather to parts of England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland stay sunnier but colder, with highs here of 4 to 6 Celsius, 9 to 10 in the south. But watch out for gales around the coast of the English Channel. So more wet and windy weather through Saturday in some places. And then the focus moves north for Sunday, with the strongest winds expected across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland.
Join me, Anaya Falarin-Iman, for the discussion every Sunday at 3 p.m. here. From big ideas to questions shaping the public conversation, we tackle the moral, cultural and political implications of news stories.
We need to share this conversation democratically.
It has become so toxic, this debate.
They relish this kind of discourse.
From fascinating guests to challenging ideas, you won't want to miss it. The discussion every Sunday at 3 p.m. here, GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Falarin-Iman on your TV and radio and online. We're here all the way through until midday.
Yes, make sure that you get in touch with your views, as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We read all of those throughout the show, but first, here's the latest news.
Good morning, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Storm Eunice is disrupting travel with strong winds hitting southwest England and a second red weather warning issued for the southeast. People are being advised to stay at home with gusts of up to 90 miles per hour forecast. Hundreds of schools have been closed and all train services in Wales have been suspended. An emergency COBRA meeting will be held later to discuss the government's response to this latest storm. The Met Office is urging people to take the threat seriously.
The main message has to be just take heed of these warnings. This is serious. We only issue red weather warnings when we think there is a threat to life. So please take these warnings seriously. Please stay inside, particularly across those red warning areas. But again, in the amber warning area, please only do it. Just think about whether you need to make that journey.
Russia plans to stage massive drills involving ballistic and cruise missiles, with President Vladimir Putin overseeing the nuclear exercise tomorrow. The war games come amid heightened tensions with Ukraine, both sides accusing each other of ceasefire violations. In Poland,
ironic that what Mr. Putin did not want to see happen was a stronger NATO on his flank. And that's exactly what he will see going forward.
Hundreds of people have been rescued after a ferry caught fire between Greece and Italy in the early hours of the morning. The Greek Coast Guard has confirmed most of the 290 people on board the Italian-flagged ship were taken to the island of Corfu. There are no immediate reports of deaths or serious injuries. The cause of the fire is not yet known. Prince Harry's claim against a Home Office decision preventing him from paying for police protection will be heard in the High Court later. The Duke of Sussex argues that his private security team in the US doesn't have adequate jurisdiction abroad. Nor does it have, he says, access to UK intelligence, which is needed to keep his family safe. Harry and Meghan lost their taxpayer-funded security when they quit as senior working royals earlier last year. Wales has scrapped the use of COVID passes. A person's vaccination status was required for entry to indoor and outdoor venues, including sports grounds and nightclubs. Although the rules have been changed, venues have been told they can still demand proof of jabs if they want to. NHS leaders in England are warning free COVID tests and self-isolation must remain in place for the public. A survey of senior staff found 79% disagree with plans to scrap free PCR and lateral flow tests. More than three-quarters also want to keep the legal requirement to self-isolate following a positive result. The Prime Minister is expected to announce a Living with COVID plan on Monday. Former Medical Director Andrew Vallance-Owen says testing is vital.
Evidence is still there. There are a lot of hospital admissions still. For people who find that they are positive, they should stay in quarantine for a few days, especially if they're going to be going into places where there are lots of people, particularly where there are lots of vulnerable people. I think it's premature to cut it all off now. One step at a time is what I would advise, and stick to the science.
The International Olympic Committee has launched a scathing attack on the team behind the 15-year-old figure skater at the centre of a drugs probe. IOC President Thomas Bach says he's disturbed by the chilling attitude of Kamila Valieva's coaches. The Russian teenager fell twice in the women's free skate final at the Beijing Winter Olympics yesterday. An error-strewn performance saw her slump from first place to fourth. There was no hug for Valieva as she left the ice in tears. Instead, she was asked by her coach why she'd stopped fighting. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens, including the latest on Storm Eunice. Now let's return to Patrick and Denaya with To The Point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin-Eman and Patrick Christys on your TV and on your radio. We've got a show full of all of today's big stories and lots of discussions that you care about, so here's what's on the menu.
Yes, well, Ukrainian forces and Russian-backed rebels have accused each other of ceasefire violations in Ukraine, fueling further tensions. So how likely is a Russian invasion? We'll find out.
Yes, also coming up on this hour, an inquiry into the post office scandal, one of the most widespread miscarriages of justice in British history, began this week. We'll get the latest.
And after the highly publicised Durham University walkout prompted by Rod Liddle, student Sophie Corcoran is actually running to be president of the Durham Student Union, vowing to fight back against, quote, woke nonsense. We're going to speak to her about her platform.
Yes, we have all that coming up and much more across the programme. And make sure that you get in touch as usual with your views, GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Yes, well, the Ukrainian government forces and Russian-backed rebels have obviously accused each other of ceasefire violations, further escalating these fears of a Russian invasion.
Yes, here's Home and Security Editor Mark White with the detail.
It is an awesome display of the firepower the Russian military has at its disposal, should Vladimir Putin decide to use it. For the moment, the Kremlin continues to insist these are simply part of Russia's regularly scheduled military exercises in the region. But for Ukraine and the West, these are manoeuvres with menace. The British Prime Minister visited RAF Waddington in Lincolnshire, shown around a typhoon, as an additional 4 of these fighters arrived in Cyprus to help boost the air policing effort over Eastern Europe. He again urged Vladimir Putin to pull back from the brink.
There is still time for the Putin regime to step back. There's still time to avoid a catastrophe for Russia. A catastrophe for Ukraine and for the world.
Tensions on the Russia-Ukraine border have increased significantly in the last couple of days. This nursery in the Luhansk region of eastern Ukraine was shelled by nearby Russian-backed separatists. At the NATO summit in Brussels, the US Defense Secretary said it was an extremely worrying development.
We've said for some time that the Russians might do something like this in order to justify a military conflict, so we'll be watching this very closely.
These latest satellite images show the extent of the Russian military build-up, thousands of troops and machinery at key locations along the Ukrainian border, with little evidence of any drawdown as promised by Moscow.
Russia must think again. Despite their claims, Russia's military build-up
shows no signs of slowing. There is currently no evidence that their forces are withdrawing, and we need Russia to step back from the brink.
On the Ukrainian side of the border, President Zelensky has been visiting his forces. They are vastly outnumbered by their Russian neighbours. But Ukraine warns any move by Vladimir Putin will be no walkover. It would be the worst possible outcome for both sides. Mark White, GB News.
Yes, well, very tense stuff, isn't it? The US Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin has been speaking on a trip to Poland. Not doing very well with this one, am I? He says there's a diplomatic way out of this particular crisis, but is prepared to meet Russia head-on, whichever way it moves forward.
Yeah.
In light of Russian force buildup near Ukraine, we appreciate Poland for hosting an additional 4,700 U.S. soldiers who are prepared to respond to a range of contingency. And they will work closely with our State Department and with Polish authorities should there be any need to help American citizens leave Ukraine. Ukraine is under the threat of another Russian invasion, which was the focus of our discussion this morning. Any Russian attack or further incursion into Ukraine would not only ignite conflict, it would also violate the bedrock principles of national sovereignty, territorial integrity, and self-determination. The deployment of thousands of Russian forces in Belarus, in addition to the thousands surrounding Ukraine to the east and south, put some of those forces within 200 miles of the Polish border. If Russia further invades Ukraine, Poland could see tens of thousands of displaced Ukrainians and others flowing across its border trying to save themselves and their families from the scourge of war. To be clear, as I said yesterday in Brussels, there is still time and space for diplomacy. The United States, in lockstep with our allies and partners, including Poland, has offered Mr. Putin a path away from crisis and towards greater security. Whatever path he chooses, the United States and our allies and our partners will be ready. Poland knows firsthand the steep cost paid by victims of aggression from larger neighbors, and it has made valuable contributions to assist Ukraine in building up its defense capabilities. This includes joint training exercises and hosting a trilateral brigade composed of Polish, Ukrainian, and Lithuanian soldiers, as well as Poland's recent offer of ammunition and portable air defense weapons to Ukraine. The United States also continues to move material assistance to Ukraine to help the Ukrainians defend themselves. Fortunately, neither Poland or the United States are alone in dealing with this challenge. As you've heard over the last few days during the NATO Defense Ministerial in Brussels, the entire alliance stands with Ukraine in supporting its sovereignty, its territorial integrity, its right to choose its own path, and its relations with its neighbors and the rest of the world.
Well, that was US Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin stating America's position on the Ukraine crisis right now. I mean, it is interesting. Like, I mean, under Trump, he did push many of the European Union countries to pay more towards NATO, and they didn't want to do it. And he was demonized for trying to actually get NATO up and running again. But now, all of a sudden, in this instance, it seems to have regained its clarity. On the world stage.
He used to also criticise quite heavily Germany and their reliance on Russian gas and things like that. And you know, it's starting to look as though, you know,
maybe
Trump wasn't all wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
So, do you remember, obviously, when all those students walked out of the talk by Rod Liddle at Durham University, some before it even started talking, naturally? Well, now, Sophie Corcoran is running to be president of the Durham Student Uniform Union on a platform of, quote, common sense and free speech. Thank you very much, Sophie, for joining us right now. So, talk me through what motivated you to want to do this, then.
Well, I've wanted to do it for quite some time, probably since the beginning of uni, and obviously the Rod Liddle stuff really kicked it into play. I'm sick of universities and their woke nonsense. I mean, we had the sex worker scandal, the white privilege lectures, the Rod Liddle drama. I was just bored of it. I'm tired of how universities are, woke indoctrination centres, and I want my university to lead by example. So if I want them to lead by example, I shall have to be that example.
Well, I mean, according to the kind of identity politics brigade, you would actually potentially tick a lot of the boxes. You're a woman, you're young, you're from a working class background. I mean, shouldn't you be triumphed and shown as a great example for many of the people that support identity politics?
Yeah, exactly. Not to mention the fact that I grew up with epilepsy and I'm dyslexic as well. So I do tick all of their boxes. Unfortunately, I just don't share the same victimising ideology as they do. And it's quite interesting. A lot of the campaigns that we've seen in recent years have been about, well, I'm gay, so that will inevitably make me a great president. And they have no policies. It's just their characteristics that often come into play. Whereas obviously, mine's pretty much all policies. I haven't really spoke about my background at all. I'm just tired of all the woke rubbish.
Yeah, and what's the reaction been like from your fellow students? Because I know that you and I have spoken in the past, actually, about some of, frankly, the visceral hatred that you've received and you've been shouted at in the street and stuff like this. I mean, how's their reaction to this? You're probably winding them up, are you?
Yeah, well, my favourite thing that has come out is that they're quote-unquote terrified of the fact that I'm running. So they are absolutely terrified of the fact that there is another side of the debate that is being presented and that there's another options for students to vote. I've seen so many tweets of people saying, oh, she's terrified because of the welfare of all the woke people that I'm running. So they're really running scared that I've put myself forward, and they're not happy at all.
Also, I mean, what are some of the policies, though, that you would like to put forward? What do you think can actually be done in order to shift the climate on campus in favour of much more open dialogue and freedom of speech?
Well, first of all, obviously, I wouldn't be encouraging all of these protests that our current Students' Union have done. They were actually behind all of the protests. And it's come to light, actually, with the Rod Liddle drama, that they organised the walkout before. So what's come out in the media has been an absolute lie. It wasn't just a spur of the moment they walked out. It was organised, and the Students' Union and the JCRs were actually involved. So obviously I won't get involved in any of that rubbish. The Students' Union spend an absolute ludicrous sum of money on all of these woke social justice campaigns, and I want that money to be taken from that nonsense and put into things like sports and societies, because I don't think people should have to pay subscription fees to join sports. I feel like that should be part of your university experience, and that in itself isn't helpful for, working class people. Working class people want to partake in the university, but often have financial barriers to doing so. So if we stop wasting money on these stupid protests and these stupid campaigns and actually using it to get better housing, stop people having to pay for things like sports, and actually impact people's university lives, not just their own sort of political ambitions. Because a lot of people that run for these presidential roles are only doing it to sort of jumpstart their political careers. Well, I don't really need that because I got started way before then.
Yes. No, I mean, fair enough. I mean, yeah, absolutely. What are some of their policies? What are they calling for? More rainbow flags?
Yeah, my favourite ones, that have come recently and is last year, is that we have to make the library gay friendly. How do you make a library? Like, it's a library. I can't quite get my head around that.
Is it particularly unfriendly at the moment? You walk through the revolving doors and it shouts a homophobic slur. How is the library unfriendly for gay people?
That beats me, to be honest, Patrick. I have no idea what some of these people are doing. A lot of it's going to be, stopping social injustice. And the one thing that Students' Union are trying to do now is fight back against the freedom of speech bill. Colour me shocked, of course. So yeah, they're trying to do acts of non-compliance, whatever that means, because apparently they're going to be above the law in a few months' time, to fight back against the freedom of speech bill. But they say that they're fighting back against the freedom of speech bill because they really respect freedom of speech, which doesn't really add up to me.
No.
And Sophie, do you see yourself in some ways as a role model? Because, I mean, a lot of the time we hear, students are snowflakes, hypersensitive, and we don't often see enough students, perhaps, that actually have many different views. Maybe they're scared or, worried about their career or something. And actually, perhaps, could you standing in this position show that actually it's fine, it's totally acceptable and very reasonable to have a wide range of views as a young person?
Yeah, so I think that's probably the biggest contributing factor to me actually running to be president of the Students' Union, is not only to be a role model for people in my university, but universities everywhere. I want my university to be an example for what education should be like, and that is education, not indoctrination, not this utter woke nonsense. And I want students to understand that there can be freedom of speech, that it's right for people to come onto campus and be provocative and be offensive, and that every single student should have the right to see every side of the debate and not just the ones that the student unions approve of. And so I'm doing it to be a role model to people on my campus, to speak their minds, speak their opinions, and be okay with potentially not having this woke, super, social justice-y view of the world. But not only that, to set an example to every single university and every single student union and institution of what education and what uni should actually be like. And that is, sensible, common sense, free speech, anti-cancel culture. This is what education should be. It should be about learning and knowledge and not, social justice campaigns, which is what it's turned into.
No, indeed. And I think you've obviously got very broad shoulders, because like you've spoken about in the past about some of the issues that you face, people, I think it's fair to say, putting it mildly, not being very nice to you. And this is another, this is going to add to that, I suppose. Look, I mean this in all seriousness. Is there a little bit of you that does quite enjoy the provocateur element of it as well, or is it simply just about the politics and the policies? Do you feel like you've come so far now that actually you've started to enjoy it a little bit as well?
To be fair, I do enjoy winding up the woke people sometimes because they're just so egotistical in their own minds that someone comes in and all of a sudden they're terrified because they're so used to having everything their own way.
Yeah.
And more of that will come after the election as well. But I think, it is kind of a hard thing to do. I know that I walk around campus and literally everybody stares at me or they shout at me. And, it's not the best thing to do when you're in a university campus. You want to kind of live a normal sort of uni life. But some things are more important. And I think standing up for yourself is more important than some woke person's opinion of you. So I do kind of enjoy annoying the woke ones, though, because they tend to get their own way. So it's interesting when they don't, because they're usually super privileged too. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, Sophie Corcoran, student at Durham University and political commentator, standing for president of the Durham Student Union on a platform of common sense and free speech.
Good luck, I say. Good luck to you. So,
Thank
yes,
you.
keep fighting the fight. Anyway, there we go. Sophie Corcoran there. Oh, of course. Well, fascinating. So I think she's brave.
Yeah.
She's very
That's
brave.
What we need students to just stand up. Why not? Why not?
But also,
the silent majority.
It doesn't matter if you disagree with people.
And it doesn't even matter if she doesn't win. It's actually just opening up the debate just to show that there are other views there. I think sometimes people just standing in order to hear, allow lots of different perspectives to be heard, I think is just fantastic.
Just quickly, Elizabeth, on the emails, GBViews, GBnews.uk. I would support Sophie. She's down to earth and has some good ideas that students should aspire to. And she grew up, obviously, with epilepsy, she said there. As did I. So good on her. Go for it, Sophie. There you go. All right. All the best.
Indeed. Well, after the break, more stories, more views. But first, more weather.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGiven. Storm Eunice has arrived overnight and is likely to bring widespread disruption during the next few hours, as well as, in some places, dangerous wind speeds. That's why the Met Office have issued an amber and a red warning for certain parts of the country. Its southern areas worst affected by the strong wind speeds through the rest of Friday. Storm Eunice has moved in overnight, a rapidly deepening area of low pressure with the strongest winds on its southern flank. And so in the amber warning area for the southern half of the UK, risk of 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts during the next few hours. But in the red warning area, risk of 90 mile per hour wind gusts. Widespread disruption in the south from those winds and a risk to life in some of the more exposed spots towards the southwest because of the 90 mile per hour wind gusts. The strongest of the winds move east through the morning, and rain in the north, falling as snow, especially over the higher parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, could also lead to disruption Risk of 20 centimetres of snow building up over the higher spots of northern England and Scotland. Risk of blizzards and risk of drifting of that snow. Sunnier skies return to the southern half of the UK by the afternoon. It's going to be cold in the north, 3 to 5 Celsius, milder further south, but with that very strong wind continuing through the day. The weekend, nevertheless, starts off a bit quieter. A sunny start for many at first. The strongest of the winds will have gone away. But another system moves in through Saturday, bringing some wet and windy weather to parts of England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland stay sunnier but colder, with highs here of 4 to 6 Celsius, 9 to 10 in the south. But watch out for gales around the coast of the English Channel. So more wet and windy weather through Saturday in some places. And then the focus moves north for Sunday, with the strongest winds expected across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here. Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 11:27 in the morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Flower and Iman, and Patrick Christie. We're live on your TV and on your radio this morning.
Right, well...
Hello, mate. Step into the studio, please. How are you keeping? Busy?
I've got a brand new show coming on GB News called The Friday Night Feast.
Oh, yeah?
I'm going to take a new news angle on the week's biggest stories. Move it forward. I want to talk about what I think we should be talking about, not what we're being told that we have to. Right, well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. A brand new show right here on GB News. The Friday Night Feast, 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. with me, Patrick Christys. What could possibly go wrong, eh? Oh, I've left my wallet in a cab. Yes, it's going to be like nothing else really on TV, and it may well turn out, but there's a reason for that.
It's making me a bit hungry.
Is it?
Yeah. Friday night feast, pizza.
Yeah.
Do I get the pizza and popcorn out for it?
There'll be a meze. There'll be a meze, absolutely, to embrace my Greek roots. But yes, no, look, it is going to be, a bit of news, obviously, different angles on those topics, hopefully, but also quite a lot of fun as well. That's the plan, and I'll be doing a couple of weird and wacky things. Lots of audience interaction as well. So you just have to tune in, won't you? 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. to find out exactly what's going to go on.
Don't miss it. Don't miss it.
Well, there we go. Right, we're moving away now. So, this week, Amazon suspended Black Lives Matter from its charity platform, Amazon Smile. Now, the tech companies say they failed to tell them where $60 million in donations has gone.
As Amazon spokesperson say, Black Lives Matter will be deprived from funds raised on Amazon Smile until they are back in compliance. The suspension was first reported by the Washington Examiner, and auditors first made their concerns known when no one was able to say who handles their finances and financial records were not released.
Well, we would love to get your views on this.
Yes, we would absolutely love to get your views on.
What do you think about a suspension, etc.? But let's just start with you. What do you think?
I think it's astonishing. I think many of the people like myself and others who criticised Black Lives Matter from the beginning, I don't like to say that I feel vindicated, but I do slightly. I mean, it's an organisation that wants to abolish the family, defund the police, despises capitalism, and wants to socialise young people into a very resentful and negative view about the society to which they grew up in, despite the fact that we live in a society that has made profound leaps and bounds when it comes to actually ending discrimination. Not completely, there's still a long way to go, but we've come very, very far. And I think that they seek to sow division and resentment. And when we saw that the leader of Black Lives Matter having a multi-million-dollar property portfolio, when you have cities and states within America who have crime rates akin to war zones in the Middle East, some parts of Chicago, I think it really says something. And $60 million is a lot of money, like a lot of money. I think even if they picked one city where they said, you know what, all this money we're going to invest in education, policing, community organising, to genuinely improve the material lives of those people, to show that what investment can actually do, they haven't done that. And I think whilst I take no pleasure in the fact that this money has been lost, it's very sad. Very sad.
No, it's very sad. It's very sad, and obviously you don't want to see this money lost or, unaccounted.
Because people donated in good faith.
Well, but lots of people who didn't have a lot of money will have donated as well. That's always one thing that strikes me when you watch things like Children in Need or Comic Relief or whatever. Very often, the people who are doing a lot of the donating could really do with keeping that tenner for themselves, that family, and they do it out of the generosity and the goodness of their own heart. And so, didn't see it like this. It's a strange one, because if you look at it in the round, look, Black Lives Matter have not been able to say where this money's gone. We can't speculate too much, I imagine, on all of this. But there was a big push there for a period of time in America that really whipped up a lot of hatred, a lot of societal division, a lot of looting, violence, anarchy, and in the UK, of course, as well. And probably if you're going to do that and you can't say where that money's gone, hang on a minute, is that all right, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that Amazon are taking these steps, but I do think many of these corporations have some complicity, really. I mean, many of them were amplifying Black Lives Matter. They were putting hashtag Black Lives Matter and were promoting the organisation, despite many people saying that this is an organisation that is very questionable.
And does the Premier League continue to take the knee? Do we all take the knee all the time? Do we continue to do that now? Because, hang on a minute, what kind of organisation were people kneeling for?
Yeah, human lives matter. That's what I think, that we should be valued for our humanity, not our skin colour. And that was the message that I thought we all agreed on up until seemingly very recently.
Yep, there you go. Well, look, tell us obviously your views, gbviews at gbnews.uk. I imagine there's going to be a lot of you with a lot of very strong views on that particular issue. So we'll be going to those very, very shortly. Yes, where has the money gone, Lewis says. We know that some of it's been used to bail people out, etc., and basically just says, he's demanding answers. And Tony in Sheffield has said, using that kind of northern wit, we take the knee while they take the pee. And I think Tony maybe so far in Sheffield has one comment of the day. We'll have to see if anyone can beat that.
Lots of comments on Sophie Corcoran just saying, well done for standing for president of the Durham Student Union. We need people that are going to stand up for common sense. So I think, much support for you, Sophie, from GB News viewers.
Absolutely. Just one quick one from Tracy. Good for Amazon. My Amazon Smile goes to my local animal rescue. BLM is political and should not be included. So there you go. And it's a common view, that. So yes.
Yes. Well, after the break, more on the dreaded storm Eunice. But before that, a look at the morning's news.
It's exactly 11:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Storm Eunice has hit southern England, causing widespread disruption. Flights have been cancelled, roads closed and rail services suspended. People are being advised to stay at home after the Met Office issued a rare red weather warning, with gusts reaching up to 90 miles per hour. Hundreds of schools have also been closed. Russia is planning to stage a massive drills involving ballistic and cruise missiles, with President Vladimir Putin overseeing the nuclear exercise tomorrow. The war games come amid heightened tensions with Ukraine, both sides accusing each other of ceasefire violations. In Poland, the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said there's no evidence to suggest Moscow is moving its forces away from the border. He also reaffirmed America's commitment to NATO.
Ironic that what Mr. Putin did not want to see happen was a stronger NATO on his flank. And that's exactly what he will see going forward.
Hundreds of people have been rescued after a ferry caught fire between Greece and Italy in the early hours of the morning. The Greek Coast Guard confirmed most of the 290 passengers were taken to the island of Corfu. No deaths or severe injuries have been reported. The cause of the fire is not yet known. Wales has scrapped the use of COVID passes. A person's vaccination status was required for entry to indoor and outdoor venues, including sports grounds and nightclubs. Although the rules have been changed, venues have been told they can still demand proof of jabs if they want to. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. We've a full update at the top of the hour. It's back to Patrick and Inaya with To The Point. Next, don't go anywhere.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. It's 11:37. There it is. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Iman. We're here live on your TV, radio, and of course online as well.
Yes, well, Labour leader Angela Rayner has been criticised for saying police should shoot terrorists first and ask questions second. Rayner admitted she was quite hardline on crime, also stating that I want you to beat down the door of the criminals and sort them out and antagonise them.
Antagonise them? What does she mean by that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean...
Because that's a bit like, you know, beat that guy's door down, you know. Like it's not the most kind of woke language, is it?
No. Well, joining us now for more on this is former Met Detective Chief Inspector Peter Kirkham. Thank you for joining us this morning, Peter. I mean, one of the things that we've been talking about recently, now I have my own personal views on this, but I know the Labour Party have been effectively saying that the police are institutionally racist in other instances, and then now on this instance saying that they should be beating down the doors of criminals and antagonising them. Isn't that a bit contradictory?
Yeah, it's the sort of nonsense that politicians come out with from time to time. The same as the sort of shoot to kill and shoot first, ask questions later nonsense. They haven't thought it through. They've never been there in that position where they're pointing a gun at someone and about to take their life. That is not a pleasant place to be. It is hugely stressful. And the last thing you want to do is be shooting first and asking questions later if you can possibly avoid it.
Yeah, what do you think this is? Just a cynical attempt to try and make the public believe that she cares about law and order?
I wouldn't like to comment on whether it's cynical, but certainly naive. It's obviously the intention of any politician that's saying these sorts of things that they're trying to sell themselves as being hard on crime. But like I say, it's naive the way that they go about it. I really wish the Labour Party would actually grow up a bit. They have an underlying thing still from the old student politics of, the pigs, don't have anything to do with them, man, and all this sort of thing. And it doesn't really fit in the Labour left-wing sort of world. They have a real difficulty with it. If they grew up and actually thought about it, policing has a role to play no matter what the stripe of the government. And they could make a far, far more positive view of policing if they sat down and spoke to someone who knows what they're talking about, ran their ideas past them and listened to the ideas that came the other way. The police need to be more attached to communities. That, to me, more in line with communities, more engaged with communities. That, to me, strikes me as something that the Labour Party's all about. They just need to give it some thought and not just come up with a knee-jerk reaction to these sorts of things.
Exactly. I mean, it is a strange one. There is, again, a bit of hypocrisy, isn't it? Because Labour does try to claim that it's all about, diversity and inclusion and this, that and the other. When actually you look at who a lot of the victims are, certainly in the London's knife crime epidemic, for example, they are ethnic minorities a lot of the time, and you would have thought that really it'd be like things like the violent crime that they'd want to crack down on. But actually, one of the things that really did for Cressida Dick regarding Sadiq Khan was texts that were they were disgusting text messages, of course they were, but of a misogynistic nature and things like that. Well, there have been young black and Asian men being slaughtered on the streets of our capital on an unrelenting basis now for a very long period of time. I can hardly remember him saying anything about
that. Exactly. This has been a crisis that has been unfolding, a disaster that's been unfolding in slow motion for at least a decade now. The government have been told about it. They've been told the sorts of things that are needed to make a difference, and they have cut the police. They haven't increased the police funding, and they haven't increased funding of youth services, of education, of housing, of mental health, especially CAMS, child and adolescent mental health. They haven't done any of the things that they need to do that are way beyond the power of the police, and the police have been left struggling to pick up the pieces amongst everything else they have to do. Now, that has led to all sorts of morale and mental health problems within the police service, and I'm sure to a certain extent it's led to some of the things that we're seeing and hearing about now. Dark humour, sick humour is something that we know people use to let off steam in various circumstances. So, some of it, not necessarily all of it, may come from there. But the government need to fund the police to deliver the policing that they and the public have decided they want. If the public and the government want something, that they're not willing to pay for, it ain't going to happen. There are only 24 hours in the day, and there are only as many cops as there are in the box. There's not an endless number that you can keep drawing on. So you get the police service you, the government, are willing to pay for. And unfortunately, that is not the police service of the standards and the quality and the speed and the, everything that we're always hearing the police criticised about. They're not paying for a service that can deliver that.
No, and actually there were huge calls for defunding the police, wasn't there? That's going to be interesting. I've never quite understood that, really. You defund the police, and then you expect them to tackle crime. But look, we've got to park it there, unfortunately, Peter. But I'll be getting you back on very soon, hopefully, from a Detective Chief Constable there, Inspector. Sorry, Peter Kirkham.
Yeah, I mean, I do really think that if you thought the police were institutionally racist and targeting young black men, as it's often framed, then would you really want them storming into people's homes? And, I'm very sceptical of the idea that the police are institutionally racist, but maybe that's another conversation.
Yes, indeed. Or maybe she just wanted them to storm into Downing Street. Maybe that's what maybe that's actually what she was referring to. Well, go on. Speaking of storms, it's seamless, this, ladies and gentlemen. It just flows, doesn't it? The Met Office has issued a rare red weather alert for the east of England, including London, urging people to stay home, warning of a significant danger to life. You do it now, then?
Yes, the whole country will be affected as Storm Eunice makes landfall. Let's talk to Paul Hawkins in Bristol and Lily, who is in Wales. How's the weather? It's looking pretty windy where you both are. I hope you're keeping safe.
Yes, trying
to. Yeah, hi, Nana. Hi, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. It's slightly messing with my hair here, but if you have a look behind me, if I just show you down here, where this earlier was submerged up to where you can see the rocks coming up to where this bit of straw is there. That's where the tidal surge came in earlier this morning. Now, you had the windy conditions coupled with the high tides pressing down on the water, so the water was coming up to here. I have to say, some of the locals were still out walking their dogs. They come down to take some pictures. They didn't seem overly fussed by it, but the real problem here is further upstream now, because this is the Bristol Channel. Other side of that bridge that's crossing the Severn, that's where the Severn River starts, and then it feeds further along the river upstream. Where they're worried is places like Gloucester. That's where the water, that huge volume of water, remember the Severn is the biggest river in England and Wales. It's got the most volume of water running through it, moving very fast, and as it pushes, as the estuary narrows into the river and then further upstream at Gloucester, that's where they're really worried about the flood warning. So we're waiting to see what the effect will be up there, but certainly at the moment the wind is much faster than it was a couple of hours ago, and there is still a significant risk to life here with flying debris. For the first time ever, the Highways Agency have closed the bridge behind me and the bridge behind that. They're the M48 and the M4 that cross the Severn. They've both been closed due to a severe traffic alert because of the high winds, and I believe that a lorry has toppled onto its side over in Wales, but Lily can probably tell us more about that.
Look, Paul, thank you so much. Thank you. It's just, oh, gosh, it's not all glamour, this job, is it? I tell you. Lily, go on. I've been told that it looks like you might be about to take off. It's that windy.
Yes, Patrick, it is rather windy here. The storm has now hit South Wales. Earlier on this morning, things were fairly calm, but that red weather warning did come into place at about 7 o'clock this morning. It will be in place until midday today, which then changes into an amber weather warning. It's the first time that we've had a red weather warning along the South Wales coast for these wind speeds since 2018. And in some areas, it's expected that it could reach about 90 miles per hour, as you've been saying. I'm down at Barry Island now. You can probably see the tide has slightly gone out over the last few hours since we've been here, and some people have been braving the wind. But as I was coming down to Barry from Cardiff earlier on this morning, the roads were absolutely desolate. I probably saw 3 people in about the 8-mile drive who were braving it, walking down the road. There are a couple of precautions that have been put in place, as over 6,000 homes here in Wales are now without power. As we've spoken about a lot today, Transport for Wales services are not running. There are no trains running throughout Wales today. Most schools are closed. A lot of people are being advised to not travel to work and not travel at all if they can, because of the danger of that red weather warning. Of course, that danger to life. There's 10 counties along the south coast of Wales who are predominantly affected, including Monmouthshire, Neath, Port Talbot, Newport, including Cardiff, where I am now. But the advice, of course, is to stay home if possible and don't make any unnecessary journeys. But I will have the update throughout the day here from Barry Island.
Thank you very much, Lily, as well, both of you. I think we need to get you both indoors, sharpish, and get some hot drinks. So thank you so much, Paul Hawkins there in Bristol, and Lily Hewitson there in Wales.
Yeah. Oh,
wow.
God. I just said, keep safe, everybody. It doesn't look very good out there.
It's not a good day to be a video journalist, is it?
No.
Really, let's be honest. But, yes.
Quick reactions from some GB News viewers in relation to some of the things that we were saying. Some people in relation to BLM, some people are saying that corporations have been pushing this in order to cause division. Many people agreeing that BLM is not a very good organisation. Someone said, as for children in need, I immediately cancelled my monthly direct debit to end SPCC when David Lammy stood up in Parliament and said, we have a white saviour mentality. Well, a lot of racial politics and a lot of the news stories that we have seen over the last 2 years, unfortunately.
Yes, indeed. Well, today is deadline day for Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, to hand in his questionnaire to the Met about alleged Downing Street parties. Will it mean anything, or is it another thing that will just be the focus of the media while the cost of living crisis is actually affecting people's lives? And what should we look forward to tomorrow? Here he is. It's the man himself. He's the only storm in our lives. What's going on?
Patrick, I was about to say that in this studio, I just heard the rumble of a storm outside.
Yes.
But that's not the only storm on the plate. Of course, a political storm is brewing for the Prime Minister. Because, of course, this is the seismic investigation from the Metropolitan Police. The first time a Prime Minister has been investigated by the Met since Tony Blair in 2006. And let's not forget that investigation in 2006, many people argue, precipitated his fall, Tony Blair's fall as Prime Minister just a year later. Are the two comparable? An open question, although many around Boris Johnson would say no. There is not a lot of weight to these allegations of whether or not he drank some wine, whether he gave a 10-minute speech at a work event, or was it a party? What's the legal definition of a party? All of these are questions that lawyers will be thrashing out in this back and forth between the Metropolitan Police. But 10 p.m. tonight is the deadline for Boris Johnson to get his answers in.
I mean, a police investigation, regardless of if it produces the results that some people might be hoping for that don't like Boris Johnson, it's not good for a Prime Minister. And some people are, arguing that effectively, regardless, the local elections coming up soon is really going to be the thing that seems to tell us what the public really think about Boris Johnson.
I think that that's certainly the case. There hasn't been yet an electoral event really since before Christmas in terms of how we can test the strength of feeling in the country. At the moment, we're relying upon a lot of polls. Now, the polls have been bouncing around a little bit. If anything, there's been a bit of a recovery for the Conservatives, not quite double digits behind as they were. Still bad for the Conservatives. If there were an election today, Labour would be the largest party. But Labour are less far ahead than they were a couple of weeks ago. And perhaps the other issues, from Ukraine to the biggest storm to hit Britain in 30 years, when there are things like that, when people are worrying about their energy bills or whether the lights will come on at all, potentially that, to some extent, helps the Prime Minister by moving those conversations on.
But on that point, I mean, even if Boris Johnson does kind of hang on for dear life, we've had the Levelling Up white paper in the last couple of weeks. There doesn't seem to, though, be a sense of what he wants to do with that power. Is there any sense that he's going to reset this government and actually really live up to the mandate that he was given in 2019?
Well, this is what his MPs have been calling for such a long time. And actually, a few weeks ago, there was a meeting of the 1922 committee, wider than the 1922 committee, actually, because that's only backbench MPs. There were ministers there as well. It was the whole parliamentary party of the Conservative Party that the Prime Minister spoke before and said that he wanted to get a grip. He got them into the mess. He's going to get them out of it. He's going to make changes within Number 10. Now, we've seen some of those changes, new Director of Communications, new political team around him in terms of external advisors, and a new Office of the Prime Minister being created as well. But also a mini cabinet reshuffle that went forward. Jacob Rees-Mogg, for example, becoming the Minister for Brexit Opportunities. That's something that people have been frustrated with. Why is this government, with its huge majority, not seizing the moment here? They've been given sweeping powers that this country has not had for, well, at least since the Maastricht Treaty in 1992-93. So with all of these powers, what is the government going to do? That's a challenge for the next few months.
It is indeed. Tom Harwood, thank you very, very much, as always, for keeping us abreast of that situation. Well, it's good to get the latest on that, but there's some more latest stuff I want to talk to you about as well, just before the end of the programme. Prince Harry's claim against a Home Office decision preventing him from paying for police protection is being heard in the High Court.
Yes, the Duke of Sussex wants to bring his children to visit from the US, but claims they're unable to return to his home because it is too dangerous, his lawyers have said. Harry and Meghan lost their taxpayer-funded police protection in the aftermath of quitting as senior working royals in early 2020. Well, joining us now is royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Thank you for joining us this morning. I mean, they said that they wanted to leave the royal family. They're making big bucks with Netflix and Spotify. Is it so hard for them to pay for their own security?
Well, it's not a matter of money. I mean, it has to be emphasised that this is certainly an unusual case. It's the first time a member of the royal family has brought a court case against the government. In essence, what the Sussexes they lost their taxpayer-funded royal protection when they stepped down in January 2020, as you've just mentioned. However, the case that they're putting, Harry believes that as sixth in line to the throne, as someone who's had 2 terms of duty in Afghanistan, and also someone who faces neo-Nazi extremist threats. There was a case, for example, in 2019 where 2 men were jailed for this. One has since been released. So you can see the concern. It came up again and again in his interview on Oprah that he doesn't want to bring his family because he believes that the security that they have in the United States, they haven't the jurisdiction here, they haven't the access to the most recent in British intelligence regarding threats, and there is an interesting example of this.
All right, sorry. I'm sorry, Richard. I know that was so short and sweet, but you are, of course, a regular here, and we'll no doubt be getting you back on again. I'm really sorry we're being shouted at that we have to stop this now, unfortunately. But thank you very much anyway for your time, and we will be back again next week, won't we?
Thank you. Well, that's it from us here on To The Point. Make sure that you tune into the discussion Sunday 3 to 4, and also Patrick Christys' show.
Friday Night Fee, 7 till 9 this evening. Be there.
Absolutely. Well, that's after the weather.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. Storm Eunice has arrived overnight and is likely to bring widespread disruption during the next few hours, as well as, in some places, dangerous wind speeds. That's why the Met Office have issued an amber and a red warning for certain parts of the country. Its southern areas worst affected by the strong wind speeds through the rest of Friday. Storm Eunice has moved in overnight, a rapidly deepening area of low pressure with the strongest winds on its southern flank. And so in the amber warning area for the southern half of the UK, risk of 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts during the next few hours. But in the red warning area, risk of 90 mile per hour wind gusts. Widespread disruption in the south from those winds and risk to life in some of the more exposed spots towards the southwest because of the 90 mile per hour wind gusts. The strongest of the winds move east through the morning, and rain in the north, falling as snow, especially over the higher parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, could also lead to disruption. Risk of 20 centimetres of snow building up over the higher spots of northern England and Scotland. Risk of blizzards and risk of drifting of that snow. Sunnier skies return to the southern half of the UK by the afternoon. It's going to be cold in the north, 3 to 5 Celsius, milder further south, but with that very strong wind continuing through the day. The weekend, nevertheless, starts off a bit quieter. A sunny start for many at first. The strongest of the winds will have gone away. But another system moves in through Saturday, bringing some wet and windy weather to parts of England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland stay sunnier but colder, with highs here of 4 to 6 Celsius, 9 to 10 in the south. But watch out